Welcome to Data versus Commerce, where we explore the messy middle between database and doorstep. I'm Matt Johnson.
And I'm Floyd Blaikie. Let's dig in. Okay, the last time we had Jay on the podcast, we talked about hitting a ceiling. And in this context, that's the moment that you realize as an e-commerce leader that you've kind of outgrown your tools and your whole operation suddenly seems to be held together with workarounds. And we ended that episode on a question that we didn't actually answer in the business. We call that a hook. Is it the platform that's holding you back, or is it the data underneath it? So today we're going to go underneath, because your product data has turned into the thing that decides whether an AI recommends you, whether a customer can ever find a replacement part, whether you show up in that consideration set at all. And a lot of teams out there have no real idea what's going on down there in the foundation. So if you caught part one, you already know the first guess. Jay Roxe, who runs marketing at inriver and who is, as far as I'm concerned, just one exclamation point short of a superhero name. So Jay, welcome back to the show.
Floyd, great to be back.
And then new to the show today, but I'm very glad to have him, is Willem, who is Pivotree's Director of Data Platforms and Services. So Jay's the guy who thinks about the PIM. Willem's the guy who thinks about everything kind of holding it up. The integrations, the single source of truth, all the stuff that you don't notice until it breaks. Willem, thanks for being here too.
Yeah, it's good to be here and good to talk with you, Jay and Floyd. Yeah.
All right, quick one before we get into it. What is a product data horror story that you've seen or been part of that still keeps you up at night? What do you got?
I know of a company, I won't name the company name, but they ended up with a disgruntled employee that before they left, they put a whole bunch of terrible content through a solution and it ended up online and people were scrambling to take it down. That was an unfortunate event. And one of the things that was the matter was they had no controls as to who input data, who reviewed data, who signed it off, who approved the publication. So good example of data governance gone awry, that one.
I will leave that in the horror story category, and I can see why it keeps you up, and I'll go in a different direction. I know of one company that had a $250 million hole in their revenue line because they couldn't actually publish the data on their replacement parts. It was just unavailable. So everybody that needed to fix these rather expensive machines was going out and getting the information or getting the parts through the gray market. So that's less the I need governance and to somehow control bad employees or rogue employees, and more the foundation was just never solidified to begin with.
Yeah, and product data management is hard enough, right? But the spare parts, you get to understand things like relationships between the part and the thing that it fits on, the fitment information, whether there's interchanges that can substitute for a part. It becomes much more complicated.
Where it came from to begin with, because now the supply chain tracking is such a thing. We have parts that we track for customers where we need to contain the product information that for a certain number of years it was made in the United States, and then it got moved to being made in a different country. And that didn't change what the part looks like or where it fits, but it may change some of the downstream ramifications.
A lot of layers here. And Jay, you called this a layered project, hitting the PIM ceiling, or if you're not on PIM, hitting often the Excel ceiling in the last part of this series. So let's take some of those layers apart. Willem, when you say the phrase data foundation in reference to PIM or really any commerce platform, what are the actual layers of that, and which one do teams most often skip or under-resource?
Yeah. So there's the information supply chain is what I call it. Where does data come from? Where does it need to go to, right? And who are all the parties involved, and how do you control what they do? If you're a manufacturer, you need to control the product management team or the engineering team. It routes through marketing, goes out to e-commerce, print, supporting systems for e-commerce, distributors, to data aggregators. You need it for AI. So there's a lot of channels that need data in different ways. And then on the upstream side, you have people that all think they know best, they do it their way, and you need to herd that herd of, or that bunch of different personalities and different groups. So that's a huge part of the problem. If you're a retailer or a distributor, you're dealing not just with your own organization, but with lots of companies that you don't really have a lot of control over, even though you'd like that control, right? They all think about their products their own specific way, even though you need to normalize it and then present it in a cohesive way on your e-commerce site. So those are some of the challenges that you're dealing with. And that's, not even talking about the systems that can help with that. That's just sort of core business challenge, just people doing their thing.
We think of it as product information orchestration because you're not just managing it. You have to actually, as you said, get it from point A, enrich it, figure out what it needs to be for each of those channels, figuring out where you're sending it, who's doing each of those actions, and then get it out. And when we talk with some of the large manufacturers, as you know, they almost wish they had as much control over some of their upstream organizations within the same company as they would over somebody who is a supplier to a distributor. So the challenges continue to multiply as things get larger.
It sounds like there's a battle shaping up over who is in charge of the product data. In your perspective, either one of you, should it be one person and one layer, or does the stewardship kind of change as you move through the different parts of that, digital supply chain or information supply chain?
We did a survey recently that actually showed when you start talking to organizations, nobody agrees on who should own the product data. And you ask a head of IT, they think they should own it. You ask a head of marketing, you think they should own it. At a mature organization, they may actually have figured out what the relationship is in terms of who owns it. So, Floyd, I think there's actually two questions in what you're asking. There's who owns it, which is the person that's ultimately accountable for what comes in and what goes out. And I'd say that's all over the place. And then there's who is responsible or allowed to touch it at each phase of its journey, and figuring out all the various places it should go out. So I think both of those are things that most organizations struggle with and will be multiplied as they try to move out to an era where AI and rapid publication cycles and the need to drive AEO is changing the information and how it goes out at a faster speed than many organizations have dealt with previously.
So it sounds like there's probably still a debate on who owns the product data when, but Willem, how does a team actually know whether they can trust their product data, right? Even if the ownership question has been fully sorted out, everyone knows what their role is. What are the red flags that a team might see that tells them, I think I can trust this. This might not be correct.
Yeah, we do those audits for a lot of companies. And, it starts with taxonomy. How do you define, how do you group, how do you categorize your products, right? Every product has a different sort of type to it. But the quality is configurable in a number of different ways, or discoverable in a number of different ways. There's dashboards that allow you to look at fill rates. Fill rates meaning this is an attribute that's filled out. This is an attribute that is lacking in attribute values. There's dashboards that show you outliers. There's ways to use AI. So if data comes in from a supplier pool, you can do anomaly detection of data coming in individual attributes, but also attributes that may correlate to another attribute of that same product, and then decide, well, if it's a product if the description says this, then this attribute cannot possibly be value X or value Y. So There's both inside of the workflow ways to determine quality and immediately bounce a record back to the supplier, or fix it through an automated process, or you do it through dashboarding and then present bulk sets of data to an administrator or a data governance person who is experienced at fixing those kind of issues.
Jay, you probably see a lot of the before and after. I imagine that you folks see what happens and how it's transformational when a team has that kind of reporting, has that dashboard where they can look and see if the data is a little bit rotten or if it's looking good. But what about the people who are still running on Excel? They're not getting, Excel's not coming back with Clippy and saying, hey, it looks like your data is bad. Do you want help with this? What happens, practically, what are the symptoms when they don't have all of that reporting capability and they want to know, is my data working for me or against me?
I think a lot of organizations are in the point where they've developed so many workarounds or so many places where they have one person that knows how the system is supposed to work, and they're just quietly praying that person doesn't win the lottery and move to the Canary Islands. But I think what organizations start to see is they're not as ready to put information out there. When we talked to about 400 organizations that are manufacturers or distributors, we saw that only about a third of them have more than 85% of their publish ready SKUs available at any given time. And that's not necessarily correlated just to Excel, but certainly Excel makes it a lot harder to start to move into the direction of having a solid data foundation, because there's not tools. You're not seeing Clippy, or in these days Claude, or a AI tool built into your environment that creates underwritable, trademarkable, brand ready content, updating anything that is in Excel. So you can have people going through and changing it, but that is by nature a slower and more manually intensive process.
Yeah, maybe.
Have errors.
Sorry, Jay. Maybe we need Clippy 2.0, right? I don't know what that would be, but
oh my gosh, I was just thinking, wow, I'm so grateful that they didn't turn Clippy into an AI bot, because I think I would log off forever if that happened. It's just no thank you.
Lloyd, I know what I'm sending you for Halloween.
You can vibe code it, Jay, and send it to Floyd for her birthday. That's a great idea. But I mean, so one of the things that we're working on is plugging in AI at the edge of PIM, right? I mean, there's a real change going on, I think, where PIM is not just a tool inside of your organization, but together with an MCP server, PIM can become something that governs your entire ecosystem. So you can get all your distributors as a manufacturer to come in and pick up content with agents. This is not where most people are, but it's going to change very quickly. Having your distributors pick up the data that you don't even need to touch, you don't even need to change. You can have an agent come in and do the consuming that it needs to do. There's no need for third-party data aggregators that morph that data into the target channel. Repository taxonomy. I know that's a lot of words, but basically it doesn't need to change the data for consumption by somebody else. Those folks just come shop for the data with you. And I think that'll really make huge changes. Also means that you need to get your data in tip-top shape, right? You can't, although you can filter down and only give people access to certain portions, but that portion needs to be perfect. You're going to be less and less thinking about readying data for publication. The data will just, a slice of it will just be ready for the pull from other external parties.
And well, there's a part that is important for people to always remember, which is the degree to which that data will continue to change over time. And in fact, not just the number of attributes, the number of pieces that you need to maintain around that data. Everything looks clean on launch day, and then you have a new channel that requires you to store different information, or you start sourcing it from a different place. And it's keeping up with that degree of change that is a core part of making sure that foundation is solid. But I wanted to touch base on one of the things you said first, which is we were joking about what I'm now going to vibe code for Floyd. And Floyd, you may want to actually be prepared for that.
I'm ready.
But we've always focused on the idea that a PIM needed to provide a very extensible infrastructure. And I'll say even on top of that, releasing an MCP server and allowing people to code against it and start to build their own orchestration, their own agents, really creates a very strong system of work around that product data, not just a system of record.
Yeah, that was your big idea last time, Jay, that the PIM is going to evolve from a place where data lives to a place where work gets done. So I think I'm hearing maybe two different things here. So help me untangle these threads. What I hear from a lot of people in the space is if you point AI or an agent at bad data, you're just going to get worse stuff faster, which I think is true. But I think we're also talking about maybe some application of AI or some kind of system in your, PIM or place where your data work gets done that applies AI to rapidly changing data to stop it from getting bad. So is there like a place at which your data is good enough to start pointing AI at it? And how do you know if you're there?
Well, so there's a lot of places where AI is starting to get used, right? Both in the creation of a PIM or MDM solution, in the needs gathering, in the development, in the delivery, the blueprinting. All of that is now, at least for us, sort of AI driven. And then even in the implementation, the support, triaging of issues that are coming in. So that's where AI is being used. And then there's a whole slew of sort of little things that you can do inside of a PIM or an MDM solution. We talked about anomaly detection from data coming in from suppliers, translation, keyword insertion, copy generation, extracting content from labels, and then data enrichment, as well as just recognizing, and this is what you were bringing up, Floyd, recognizing errors and fixing those. Now, I would never, at least not yet, tell people to just let an agent like that loose or an AI process loose without some human in the loop controls. But that is happening today, yeah, and you can definitely set that up today. If you can recognize, it's also easy to create a process where, in most cases at least, where you can fix the things that are being noticed. Yeah.
I agree on that human in the loop validation part being a key piece. But Floyd, I want to go back and just touch on your question of when can I start looking at, like, as with any data process, understanding the data, figuring out how you want to model it, making sure that the data actually fits into that model, adjusting, cleaning, normalizing. All of these are things that need to happen with both people and machines in the form of AI, and it can accelerate it. But I'm going to totally agree with Willem. We're not yet at the point where you can say, okay, just go. Now, the other piece of that, though, is as you're working with people that have done more and more of the implementations, that pattern recognition and the way that pattern recognition can get built into the tools or into the process gets faster and faster and better and better. So there is a learning curve that rapidly accelerates what can be done by whom and how fast.
So the obvious next question, I think, is how do you actually do it? Which I think is going to have to be part 3. because I can't stop inviting Jay back on the show, and we could probably stay here for another hour. We got to land it at some point. So it's time for the free pluggables. So Jay, for the folks who want to keep going on their own product data, where can they find you? What can you help them with?
So go to inriver.com. We'd be happy to help you understand your product data, where it is serving you commercially, what are the benefits of having proper information management, information orchestration, and help you figure out how that's impacting you in the real world. This isn't an abstract problem. It's about driving faster time to market and more revenue.
Right on. And Willem, same to you. When someone realizes that the data foundation is the problem, what is the first move and where do they find you?
Yeah, pivotree.com or willem@pivotree.com is the email. Happy to talk to folks. We are very low pressure. Often do, investigations, a lot of remediations from companies that have tried this but are not happy with the results, and also net new implementations, support of solutions. So we do a lot of different things, all related around data services. Data is not ready for a whole bunch of different reasons, as well as data platforms. So, yeah.
And I'll let our listeners know that if you're looking for Klingon battle hymns or you want to talk about Clippy, you can reach out to me. That's probably less useful for you right now, so I'll let these two shine and just give you their contact information. But that is the data layer underneath the PIM question. Next time we're going to talk about the move itself. How do you actually get from where you are today to there without stopping your whole business to do it? Matt will be back from a well-deserved vacation, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Data versus Commerce. New episodes drop weekly.
So if you're responsible for any part of how products get from a database to a doorstep, subscribe now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen.